Hello, and welcome to Nutrition Unfiltered, a podcast where science meets sass. I am Christy Maloney, registered dietitian and eating disorder specialist. This is a place where we talk nutrition, ask the hard questions, and have some fun along the way. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, I'm Christy, and welcome back to Nutrition Unfiltered. Today, we are going to talk about the hormonal shit show that is perimenopause. So I too am someone that is in perimenopause. I did not know much about perimenopause until I was in it. It's not something that I'd really ever heard much about or understood much about. And so the thing that kind of clued me into, wow, something is different here and it's not great, was I was at a networking event here in Charlotte. And I've always been like a sweaty person, and that's fine. And I know my antidepressant I take also makes me sweat because that is one of the known side effects. But I went to this event and I was sweaty. Let's think like sweat running down my head, like my hair's soaking wet. I'm with these professionals and I'm trying to make a good impression. And literally it was like, what in the hell is happening to my body right now? So I'm like, I don't know. Is this menopause? Am I dying? What's happening? And so in talking with, my gynecologist and doing some research, I discovered that I was in perimenopause. So if you've had a similar experience, we are going to get into it in this episode. What is perimenopause? What are the changes that happen? What are any things that you can do? And then just get a general sense of camaraderie because it really sucks. One of the very most fun parts of perimenopause is that it can start anywhere from your mid-30s to your 50s. That's right. You have a 15-year window for this onset of bullshit to happen. And we're going to talk all about the symptoms. But just know that perimenopause, peri means before and then menopause. So it's the time before menopause when your hormones are starting to shift and change. Menopause actually is one day. It is the day after you haven't had a menstrual cycle for a year. That's menopause, one day, and then you're postmenopause. So perimenopause is that time before you're in menopause where you haven't had a menstrual cycle for a year. And so this is what we think about, when people say they're going through menopause. These are the hormonal fluctuations you start to think of, all the different symptoms that we kind of have historically always joked about, being menopausal, perimenopausal symptoms, but they're really not fun. And it's really not funny most days. In perimenopause, the things that really start to happen is that your estrogen and progesterone start to fluctuate. So I have PCOS, so my progesterone and estrogen have always been a little wonky, but for the most part, in perimenopause is when those hormones start to fluctuate. When you're in menopause, that is when those hormones are super low. So think about perimenopause as being when they're kind of on their way out, right? Like we're on the downhill slope. Things that can happen, right, with this, I know I've already discussed the sweating. So sweating, night sweats, hot flashes, those are all parts of those hormonal shifts, symptoms. Other things that happen, you start to have irregular menstrual cycles. So if you've been consistently having a menstrual cycle every month, that might be every 2 or 3 months. You might have one that's 14 days, and then you might have one that's 60. It's just kind of a unknown, and it's often just unique to the person. In addition to these things, we start to see an upswing in irritability. One, because the hormones are kind of all over the place, but then two, because it just doesn't feel great. We know that there's difficulty sleeping that comes with perimenopause. So when you think about just that and its general effect on your mood, that's a big deal. Other things that happen, you get slower metabolism, which I think, as women, we're taught to fear that, not the slow metabolism, but that is one thing that comes with it, and it's absolutely normal. You tend to get dry skin, thinner skin. All of those things are completely normal as those hormonal changes take place. Okay, so when we're thinking about what are the visible changes people can see, right? Like when we're in perimenopause, this is a time when hair tends to be a little less thick, so you might have some hair loss. It might be a situation where your skin is just more dry, and that might be more visible. With a slower metabolism, we can often see a change in weight gain especially around kind of the midsection, that is a normal thing to have happen. As I was giving my example earlier, you might be more sweaty in more situations, and that is a normal thing to have happen. Even though if you get sweaty and then you get anxious about it, makes you more sweaty, and that's actually kind of a vicious cycle that sucks. So, with all the myriad of symptoms that come with perimenopause, I think it's completely normal that women feel out of control of their bodies. They feel like, their body is a place that they don't know anymore. They don't even recognize anymore. And that can be very unsettling. When you think about the science behind this, right? So, people that are in, and I want to caveat this by saying, we know the BMI is bullshit, right? But the measure we have to go on now is people that are in the overweight BMI category statistically tend to live longer. So, I'll give you an example. Whenever I worked in long-term care and, I was working with the residents, our goal was to actually have them be in the overweight category because that increased their life expectancy and overall improved their health. So, if you think about, how we as humans are like wired up for survival, for us, to metabolically slow down and start to gain weight, particularly around our midsections, is a survival mechanism. If you think about, again, statistically, you're going to live longer if you're in the overweight category. BMI is bullshit, but you know what I'm saying. That is why this is happening. Now, we have been taught, we have been sold, for so long that we need to fight the aging process or be scared of the belly pooch, right, that you might get in menopause. It's normal, it's natural, and it's our bodies trying to survive. I think that a lot of times in our society, women, older women, are kind of cast aside and seen as not beautiful or important or as needed anymore. So I think there's been historically a real effort to kind of try to maintain, the body of a younger person to be beautiful and relevant and like all of these things that our society tells us. But if we want to age well, it's okay if we gain weight. And the reason we tend to put weight on around our midsections, because again, if you're thinking about evolution, that's protecting your internal organs, right? So it's our body's way of saying, like, okay, to live long term, we want to have something around our liver and our pancreas and our stomach and our intestines that are going to protect those things. So it's really a great thing to have happen. At this point, the way that we have been taught to think, the way we are wired up to think, and the things that we are sold is that we need to go on a diet, right, to manage this weight or to, look younger or whatever thing, whatever thing that you're being sold. If you say, you go on, let's say, a low carb diet, right? Ultimately, that is one of those things that's going to work for a little bit. It works until it doesn't. But if you are not eating enough carbohydrates, your body is still going to take the protein you're eating and break it down into glucose, which is really hard on your liver, instead of just eating the carbs and having it be glucose. When you also think about going on these diets, if you don't have an adequate mixture of nutrients, then you're also kind of setting your body up to feel like it's in a famine because you are missing vital parts of what you need. The other part of this too is that if you go on, for instance, say like a low fat diet, and so many women that are in their perimenopause and menopausal years, we grew up in the 90s where low fat was like the thing. All of your hormones are made of fat. So if you think about going on a low fat diet and not ingesting enough dietary fat to support your hormones, you talk about taking like a hormonal shit show that is perimenopause and just like making it so much worse. So restricting nutrients, restricting carbs, restricting fats is definitely not the answer, because when you think about wanting to support your body with nutrition and perimenopause, it's actually doing the opposite. So what actually do you need, right? Like for nutrition in perimenopause and menopause. So we know that starting age 30, every decade, you start to lose more and more muscle mass. So one thing that I would recommend is that you, one, eat just enough overall calories in general. You want to have enough to sustain you, but then two, make sure that you are eating enough protein. I know protein has been glamorized as like the macronutrient, but it actually really is important, but that doesn't mean you should also not have carbohydrates and fats. So in order to maximize the muscle that you have, you want to have enough protein. You want to do weight-bearing exercises, so strength training. that sort of thing. Because not only is it helpful for maintaining muscle mass, it's also helpful for preventing bone loss. And so getting into the osteopenia or osteoporosis. You want to make sure that you're having enough fat. So this is, again, a very important one that, you're having consistent, adequate fats throughout the day to support your hormones. Other things that are really important, sort of as we age, you want to make sure that you focus on having things like magnesium, which is going to be found in things like nuts and tofu and dark chocolate. You want to make sure that you're eating enough fruits and vegetables to get all the micronutrients that you need. You want to have just a wide variety of all things. So when you sit down and you think about, what does my plate need to look like? And I'm going to caveat this by saying this is a very general recommendation. And for any more specifics, you really need to consult with a dietitian to know exactly what you need for your body. But if you have a representation of protein of some sort, so we know that's going to be if you have beef or chicken or turkey or fish or tofu or eggs, something of that sort, with some sort of carbohydrate. So, whole grains, potatoes, rice, quinoa, couscous, bread, any of those things. We've got some fats mixed in. So, you want to have some nut butter, some avocados, some oils, and then you have a representation of produce. So you have some fruits and veggies. You want to have a variety of those throughout the week to make sure that you get varied micronutrients. That's going to give you mostly what you need. So the general template is protein, fat, carb, and produce. If you're doing that, you're going to have a lot of your nutritional bases covered. But if you do want or need more specific recommendations, a dietitian can help guide you with that if there are any other co-occurring situations, heart disease, diabetes, that sort of thing. To manage the emotions that come with feeling out of control, I think that's one of the hardest parts, right? Because this body that you've known and lived in for the most part, 40 plus years is changing, right? And you no longer feel like it's your home, and you no longer sometimes even feel safe in it because you don't know why the changes are happening, what to expect, and how to handle it. So to think about it, from an emotional standpoint, I really want you to come back to the space of remembering that our bodies are designed to change as we age. When you are 45 or 50, your body is not meant to be what it was when you were 20 or 25, and that's okay. As we change and get older again, like I was talking about earlier, your body does things to wire you up for survival, and that is a really great thing. I know, right? Like it's easy to say, okay, Christy, like I can recognize this from a logical standpoint, but it doesn't feel okay. So this is one of those situations where you want to really make sure you're taking as good of care of yourself as possible. You don't have to, and you might not always love your body. You might not like it, but respecting your body, taking care of it goes a long way. So if you think about, again, eating a balanced plate, like we were talking about before, you're trying to manage any of these perimenopausal symptoms as much as you can, trying to figure out how to manage sweating or night sweats or irritability, consulting with your doctor to see, are there any things that you can be doing that might make you feel better is going to go a long way. Make sure that you are dressing yourself in ways that feel good, and make sure that you have, a group of friends that kind of understand and can support you, because this is a very interesting time in life, and having your people that are there with you and in it that get it goes a long way. Being part of a group that gets it is critical. Myself and a therapist friend have a group called If It's Not One Thing, It's Your Mother. This group is geared toward women who are 40 plus, who are in the midlife stages, that are experiencing perimenopause, that maybe still have some unlearning from diet culture to do, to get together, find this camaraderie, share the highs and the lows, and just in general give each other support. The link to sign up is in the show notes below. Thank you so much for listening today, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for joining me today on Nutrition Unfiltered. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share with others that might enjoy it as well. You can follow me on Instagram at eatingdisorder.dietitian. Thanks for getting sassy with me.